Good afternoon. This is Animal Uncontrol. Welcome to MuttHeads. Today we have a few topics. First, we need to come up with a good name for this dog. On the Discord the other week, I believe the consensus was Butthead, given this, crack that he has here. For those who don't know, this is an American bully, which I believe is a new designer breed. It's a pit bull knockoff. And believe it or not, some places, like I thought this was bad, but in places where this is banned, you can have this. This is worse. Talk about, see, if this is the frying pan, this is the fire. And this indicates the problems with just trying to play whack-a-mole with one or two dog breeds. I believe we should restrict all pets over a certain weight in residential areas. All large dogs should be zoned out, okay? There's a lot of good reasons for it. In any case, so what would you name him? Put it in the comments. Now, I would like to continue the discussion from last week. In fact, I discussed in our Nutter ideological fail segment, the bait and switch. Now, I went through all these bait and switch examples. There's another one I should have added and didn't, so I'm going to edit this and we can talk about that. So what that is, zoom in a little bit here. Okay, so you have all these like bait and switch. And again, if you're debating, a dog worshiper and they bring these up and you identify what they're doing, call them out on it. Okay, don't fall for this stuff. Okay, tell them damn well you can identify a pit bull. If you can't, how do you know your dog is a pit bull? And for example, okay, so the other bait and switch fail I'd like to discuss now is it's not the dog, it's the owner, or sometimes expressed as greater owner accountability is required. Bait and switch. And you hear this a lot, particularly when people want to ban pit bulls or other dog breeds. More owner accountability is required. That's the bait. And like a lot of these baits, they actually make sense. I think more owner accountability is required. Now, you should also consider, and this gets into one of the other debate fails we're going to talk about, which is circular reasoning. Okay, but in any case, this is basic. This bait and switch. See, the bait is, it's not the dog, it's the owner. We need to hold owners accountable. But what happens is when something bad actually happens, they don't blame the owner. They, being the dog lovers, they don't blame the owner. They blame the victim. That's the switch. Or if not the victim, someone else. The Mick DeMauler case, I keep bringing it up because it's a classic. What happened after Mick mauled Kevin? Did they blame the owner? No, they did not blame the owner. They blamed Kevin. They blamed his mother. They blamed the babysitter, none of whom were the dog owner. We didn't even know who that person was. They just ignored him. It wasn't that they defended him. They just ignored him. Okay? So that's the switch. That's the bait and switch. Okay? And you see this all the time and call it out. And again, more owner accountability is required. And no, it's not a substitute for BSL. The sensible thing to do would be to zone out this and any other dog. Okay, the unidentifiable breed mutts, you hold those owners accountable, particularly owners that cheat on these bans, and that's very common also. The little boy in Oklahoma, J.J. Rodriguez is his name, I believe. He was attacked by a neighbor's illegal pit bull. Now, let's create a new, oh, no, I want to cancel and I want to update this. Okay. Let's do this. Let's create a new post. And, okay. So I'm going to call this, and I'll just make it like part B. Okay. So what else do they do? Well, again, too many to count. This time, let's discuss narrative assertions. Okay. Now, this is something that, their narrative is that dogs are great, dogs are wonderful, dogs can do no wrong, dogs are man's best friend, only dogs give unconditional love, dogs and man have a special genetic connection. Okay. Now, most of these are either genetic assertions or they simply just don't mean anything. I mean, yes, we share genetic material with dogs. We share genetic material with basically everything on Earth. Or almost everything. Maybe there's some deep sea creatures we don't share genetic material with, but we share them with most things. Okay. And many of these, again, these are just assertions. They're just saying them. They can't really back them up with science or any empirical facts. So they say well, dogs are man's best friend, or only dogs give unconditional love. Ask him to prove it. Prove that only dogs give unconditional love, or even that dogs can do so at all. Forget about being the only thing. Ask them to prove it. They probably can't do it. So that's a narrative assertion. The other one is an I'm probably spelling this wrong, ad hominem. Okay? And I spelled that wrong. How do I spell that? Okay, that's not even in the dictionary. Let's do this. I want to go to Merriam-Webster. Okay. And I'll probably get the definition anyway. Why can't I spell this? Okay, let's see what it comes up with. Why is this not coming up? Ad hominem. Okay, that's how you spell it. Okay, so this is, typically it's this definition here, marked by being an attack on an opponent's character rather than by an answer to the contentions made. And you see this all the time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste this out of here so I spell it correctly. Yeah, I'll leave that in big characters too. Ad hominem. So, for example, if you say something, well, of course, anybody who doesn't love each and every dog unconditionally and endlessly glorify and worship the creatures is a bad person. So anytime you are critical of dogs or dog owners or dog culture in general, you're going to run into this. They're going to accuse you of being a horrible person. Now today, in today's, I'll call it social justice environment, sort of part of our zeitgeist, okay, they typically accuse people of being racists, Nazis, bigots, oppressors, and so forth. This is that you can guarantee, particularly if you want BSL or restriction on any dog breed, they're going to tell you or accuse you of being a card-carrying member of the Ku Klux Klan and or the Nazi Party. It happens every time. They'll accuse you of worse things. They'll accuse you of being a child molester. As if, advocating for children's safety makes one a child molester, which is also, that's a false equivalence, which is another big ideological fail they make. In any case, what this is they can't rationally, counter your premise, so they just attack you personally. They just say, yeah, you're a Nazi, you're a racist, or whatever. Now, the thing is, those accusations, it's very crude, but it's also very effective because these are things that nobody wants to be accused of. And this is why we have so many problems in this space because, for example, the preemption laws. That's how they get them. Now, again, a preemption law is a state level ban on local dog breed restrictions. So what do? The doggy activists go to the governors and state legislatures and tell them, if you don't pass this, you're a Nazi, you're a racist. This is worse than Jim Crow. Okay? And you could try to debate that on its merits. You could say, okay, if I dislike pit bulls or any breed of dogs, does that actually make me a racist? I guess it depends on what is the supposed subject or object of the racism. Is it racism against dogs? Because dogs are not human beings. Now, what they're doing now is they're accusing us of actually being racist against the supposed demographic that owns them. So in other words, like if you don't like pit bulls, that's because I guess predominantly black people or some other non-white race of people own them, which actually isn't true. Most pit bulls are owned by white people, in which case I guess it could be racism against white people, but that's neither here nor there. The point is that owning a pit bull is a terrible idea, regardless of who does it. It's bad when white people do it. It's bad when black people do it. It's bad when Vietnamese people do it. It's just a bad idea, period. It has nothing to do with the race of the owner. Moreover, again, they don't believe that either. They're just trying to put you on the defensive. Okay, so that's an ad hominem. Now, what's one of the other ones? I like false equivalence is good. And I could probably do 2 hours on this, is they'll equate two things that might have something in common but really aren't the same thing. And I believe it's the quintessence of intelligence to differentiate between two things, even when those two things have something in common. For example, and I raised this in probably both my discussions with AJ, when my county had its noise summit a while back, the forum was flooded with, and I assume they're probably doggy activists who raised garbage trucks as a major source of noise pollution. Now, clearly there's a difference between trash collection and a dog barking uselessly at nothing for hours a day. Those are very different things. Yes, they're both a source of noise, and you could argue perhaps even they're both noise pollution, but they are not the same thing. Okay, in a lot of ways and on a lot of levels. They'll even accuse other animals of making noise, like, say, crickets. Crickets are part of the natural environment, and they also don't produce noise at anywhere the same level that dogs do. Again, that's another false equivalence. And ironically is that pit bull lovers are now doing this to the rest of the doggy owning population, because when a dog lover says, oh, let's ban pit bulls, well, they'll say, well, Chihuahuas bite more, let's ban them first. Okay, and again, that's also a false equivalence. Not that Chihuahuas should not bite people. No dog should bite people. However, that is also a false equivalence. Chihuahuas do not dismember people, okay? The woman in South Carolina who was mauled the other week, I forget her name, she lost both arms, a leg, her lower intestine, and her esophagus. Chihuahuas do not do that to people. Again, that is a false equivalence. The other one I'd like to discuss is the red herring, and these all sort of overlap, okay? The red herring is a distraction. Now, when I spoke of the doggy activists in my noise summit, again, they raise like the false equivalents. They say, oh yeah, garbage trucks, they're like way worse than barky dogs. So that's a false equivalence. It's also a red herring. Okay, it's a distraction. They're saying, look at that thing over there. See, they're trying to deflect the attention away from the dog. Okay, and again, when you see this, call them out. Probably one of the biggest red herrings in these discussions are cats. They'll say, what about cats? What about cats? Or what about them? Okay, I am prohibited from owning a cat that's anywhere near this size. Seriously, a cat 1/10 that weight is the largest allowed without a special permit. But I could own this and probably this too. Okay, those, cats are not equivalent to these creatures. It's a false equivalent and it's a red herring. Okay, they're trying to draw attention away from the dog. And that's all they're trying to do. So that is also something it's not really worth debating on its own merits. You need to call them out. That's a red herring. You're just trying to distract. Okay? Now, I'd like to get into circular reasoning, but I think I'll save that for another episode because my voice is starting to go. My allergies are acting up. It's springtime in Florida, so what do you expect? In any case, I hope everyone is having a good week. I would like you to think about this. And as always, people first.